Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ah, lot to talk about today. Well, um, I've been kind of went down a rabbit hole with a couple of my dearest FBA colleagues have helped me to see things. You see, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, but what I do have is one of those memories, where I remember every little detail. Now, what helps me, I said that real country, then I said helps. What helps me every once in a while is context. So having random information in your head doesn't don't really mean nothing. But if you get a little key, you can unlock that information. So somebody brought to my attention that the Moors were responsible for the Temple of Set. We're gonna talk about that. But what I've been wondering lately, ladies and gentlemen, is did those Moors help to pop off that transatlantic slave trade? You see, we got Moors running around claiming to be pro-black and for black. But as our dear brother Tariq Nasheed has pointed out, and I'm paraphrasing our brother, when you look at foundational Black American history, seemingly Moors are behind almost every shit op operation, you know. So my first question is: did Moors help start the transatlantic slave trade? That's a bold claim, you know, but we bring in the scholarship. Wani, was Tibu Tip a Moor, and did he help start the transatlantic slave trade?
Very interesting question. He would not be classified as a Moor technically. He classified himself as an Arab because you needed to be from North Africa to be called a Moor. But he had everything that you would associate with Moors. His clothing, his belief system, and his participation in the transatlantic slave trade, which was something that Moors eagerly participated in. You can see images of them escorting children, little kids, on slave ships. Very rare images of them just standing there escorting these children over. They had a lot to do with the slave trade. Now, the ship that I saw wasn't necessarily headed for America. This was a French vessel, but they were definitely slaves. Um, so we would probably call him a Moor, but he technically wouldn't be classified because he was from East Africa, Zanzibar type of area, and not North Africa. But he certainly fits the bill.
Yeah, well, I'm breaking out J. A. Rogers, and J. A. Rogers says Tibu Tip a Negro. J. A. Rogers called him a Negro, but I have several pieces of scholarship that calls him a Moor. Well, he's a trader in slaves and ivory, like you said, from Zanzibar, East Africa, just like you said, Wani. He says, J.A. says he was the first civilized man to penetrate the center of Africa. He explored territory nearly as large as the United States. Well, Tibu Tip was a proud slave trader. But you know what's confusing me, Wani, is I thought these Moors are supposed to be on our side. Are they friend or foe? Let me know, Wani.
They seem to be overseers. Every time I see them involved in something, they are, working with the European, kind of positioning themselves as a middleman, as an interpreter. And they are known to, like I said, buy slaves, sell them, transport them, accompany them to their new enslavement. And they seem to be overseers sometimes in these places when they get there. And someone that people have kind of gotten it's very tricky because they had a status over a Black American, as we can see in the 1790 Sundry Act, where they requested to not be viewed as a Black American because that would mean they could be enslaved. So they already had a history of wanting to be something other than us. So they're not us at all. And they got permission to have these special papers saying they were under the Moroccan government or some crap. But you know what I noticed is they never advocated for us. We have all these advocates running around at the time. They weren't one of them. They wanted slavery to go. They would have sold slaves. They wanted to just not be bothered and to not be wrapped up in being enslaved. But they had nothing against selling human beings. They never advocated for us to not be uh, in bondage, or they didn't advocate against us being treated like trash. They literally admitted that we were treated like garbage and that they didn't want to be treated that way, but never spoke against that bad treatment. Similar to Gandhi. Gandhi said, you know what? I want my people to not be treated like trash in South Africa, but I'm not against you treating others like trash. So they positioned themselves to get a piece of the white pie and didn't care if we got thrown under the bus. Very similar positioning.
So they're not us. Um, Dr. Chancellor Williams says Moors in Morocco and the Mauritanians or Carthaginians in Carthage uh, took great care to distinguish themselves from Africans in daily intercourse. So they did not want to, it's not just an American thing. In Africa, they did not want to be associated with them other N words, if you know what I mean. Even though they may have looked a lot like us, they took great care to say, hey, I'm not them, I'm something else. So well, I'm reading a lot about how the Moors took a great deal of effort to distinguish themselves from Africans and even blacks and even Africans. So my question is, why do I see these? you know, fez wearing dudes giving black people advice. Why are they acting like our friend when the history books tell me they're not my friend at all? I'm confused, Wani.
They are Semitic Africans, you see.
Huh.
So they are different, even though we want to see brown and say that they're all the same. We have these Semitic Africans who came out of Africa and populated North Africa, but they came from other parts of Africa. They mutated and they also got blended in with other groups. So they
Hmm.
have different looks. Um, One would call them Proto Arabs. So they were what Arabs became. And they also got blended with other people. It's very, very confusing. And there's a lot of waves of human beings coming into that area, very popular area, connected with a lot of different groups. So they are an African identity. And they don't view themselves as somebody from, let's say, Nigeria. They don't view themselves like that. We may because they're brown and they're from Africa, but they're not the same people. And that's something that we have not been able to wrap our heads around because over here, it was a black white world. Either you're black or you're white. We didn't make all these distinctions. We didn't have the luxury to make distinctions because we had to accept anyone who was brown had to be on the brown side of the fight. We didn't have these distinctions that they have over in Africa. And these men adopted Islam, so they were perceived as more civilized. Islam had a civilizing effect. That's why they had Timbuktu, and now they're prancing around, um, lording themselves over other Africans that were more tribal, and they were more civilized, to be honest.
Well, Dr. Chancellor Williams says now again, quote, now again, who who were the Moors? And he says the answer is very easy. The original Moors, like the original Egyptians, were black Africans.
Hmm.
To add to confusion. But Dr. Chancellor Williams says as amalgamation became more and more widespread, only the Berbers, Arabs, and coloreds in the Moroccan territories were called Moors. So, I've always wanted to know this, but I've just been too embarrassed to ask because I heard Dr. John Henry Clark say this a lot. What's a Berber? What is that?
A Berber is yet another African identity. Um, they're actually kind of overlap with the Moors, Tuareg people, Proto Arabs, Tuareg, Berber, sometimes called Moors.
Yeah.
Um, they hang out in Algeria and different places. They move around. They're mobile, and they're opportunistic. You know, they would. They knew the deserts. They were very skillful because they could navigate the deserts and they can help the white boy get here and there. So they were very valuable individuals in that area. But you were reading something and you said that Tipu Tip was described as a Negro. And did they mention that he was calling himself an Arab? Because that's what he calls himself. And we look at him, we're like, he looks like he looks like he's of African descent. And then some people said, well, maybe he's half, or what does it say? Because when I look, because I looked at him, I said, he looks of African descent. But the problem is this: Proto Arabs are African descent. They look like African men. They only changed their look because of, some mutations here and there, some invasions by other groups. Uh, but they are the Arabs. They just mutated and they just got different admixtures. So that's why it's very confusing. And that's why the white boy could say, oh no, the Moors were white. You guys didn't civilize us. No, they weren't white. If they were white, why do they put on blackface to celebrate kicking the Moors out? They do that. They do that in Spain. You think they paint their face black to celebrate kicking white boys out? No, 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 no. They don't. Oh yeah, I brought Trey Day in here to
Uh-oh,
heat this
Trey Day
place
up in
up.
this thing.
Right.
So before Trey Day shows out, a couple things. My Jumbotron's not working for some reason. I can't add.
What?
Yeah, it's acting a fool. It won't let
No,
me.
no, no.
When I hit Jumbotron, it goes to my private messages, which I don't understand. But J.A. Rogers says Tibu Tip, comma, a Negro trader. So J.A. Rogers called his ass what he was.
Straight up Negro, huh? Well, you look at his picture and you judge for yourself.
Hey, J.A. Rogers cleared that bullshit up right quick. Oh man, I love J.A. Rogers. Well, furthermore, Dr. Dr. Chancellor Williams said, while the darkest and black skinned Africans were called Moors, um uh the darkest and I said I'm sorry, the Moroccan territories were called Moors, while the darkest and black skinned Africans were called Blackamoors. Eventually black was dropped from Blackamoor in North Africa and Morocco in particular. All Muslim Arabs, mixed breeds, and Berbers were readily regarded as Moors. The African blacks having had this name taken from them must contend for recognition as Moors. So here we go again with this whole ism of melanated people making some shit cool, and the European and other groups saying no, 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 you're not a cowboy. Didn't cowboy used to be an insult? And then
Yes,
and
houseboy, cowboy.
yeah, so the same shit happened with Moors. The Europeans and the Arabs start saying, "No, no, no, I'm a Moor."
They're
When
like hermit crabs. They just get up under the identity and run off with it.
yeah, I watched a hermit crab steal another crab shell before. I had this off the subject, but when I was 12, I bought a hermit crab, and I lost his ass in my mama house. I lost him. And when we were moving years later, that thing was just alive and real. I don't know what he was eating.
What?
Hell yeah, I had a real cute hermit crab. He had like his big old pretty shell. And I was playing with him when I brought him home from the pet store. And he ran up under the table, up under the bed, and I never saw him again. We were moving like 5 years later, and his ass went running across the floor.
What? What do
Yeah,
they eat?
I don't know what he was eating or what he was
Oh my
drinking, but he
God.
he was just fine in the hood in an apartment.
A hermit crab in the hood in an apartment and
Hell
he
yeah.
found things to eat and drink?
I don't know what he was eating.
He might be haunted.
Hey, you okay? Yeah, Trade Day, educate us. What's going on? Did the Morris help start?
What up?
What's up?
What's up? What's up? What's up? Alan, Wani. The Moors, we touched on this like a couple of months ago, I think. But yeah, the Moors, yeah, they definitely gave the whites the tools to do everything they did: colonize, rape, pillage, slave. They gave them the Freemasonry doctrine, and they gave them in three different branches: the German one, the French one, and the British one, particularly. And everything that they use, the whites use today, is a product of the Moors. We're going, I know we went deeper last time, but ultimately, yeah, they definitely were responsible for all of this, and I think it's a deeper conspiracy that goes back a lot farther than just some Arabs and the Arabian Peninsula. I think it's deeper than that. I think they were carrying a more ancient doctrine, and they weaponized the chosen people today. So that's my summarization of it. I can go more in depth if you need me to, but that's what it is.
Thank you. Thanks, I appreciate it. We always like to have you in this type of conversation. Shona, what up?
Oh, hey, FBA family. Thank y'all for letting me speak. I'm kind of new to the site. I'm 100% FBA, both sides of the family. Mom from West Point, Mississippi. My dad, 83. He said he can't remember. But I got a question. As far as the Moors, I was around some cats. They used to like change their last name to Bay. You know, like Bey. Do y'all know anything about that?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, my weed man. Yeah, yeah, my
Oh,
weed man's
we
last
are a
name is Bay.
weed
Yeah,
man. Oh Lord.
yes sir. We yes man. Weed man. Weed
Yes,
man. Yeah,
sir.
he cool though.
I don't mind being misgendered. I'm very secure in my womanhood. And if I was a Democrat, I would be a man. Professor,
I don't know, but
I'm
like what?
struggling with a mute button here.
I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, bro.
oh my bad. Go ahead,
No,
man.
no, no. I wouldn't say nothing. Go ahead.
No, I think sometimes, like, I think when it comes to the Moors, I think sometimes people get caught up in how they dressed and stuff like that, because it's such a revolutionary, concept compared to the tribal dance or the tribal attire that you see in other parts of the world. So they see these fancy black people and they're like, oh man, look, they fly, that's ours. But no, I think they did some dastardly shit. Um, I think they are ops, and to this day, I think I told you, I think they still control. I think they control the world. I think that the whites, I think they answer to these people. They're literally the people who gave them Freemasonry, literally. And if you know anything about Freemasonry, you listen to Bobby Hemmett. I met. I don't know if I tell you this story. Did I tell you the story about the bum I met at
No.
the liquor store?
Educate us.
Oh, I ain't tell you. Oh,
No.
damn. I think I told Nikki,
I know the
but
story. I heard you tell it. This is brilliant.
yeah, love. Yep. Love I am was in there. Yep.
Well, tell
So it was
me.
I got you. So all right. So when I was doing my undergrad, I worked at the liquor store. I worked at Good Spirits off Wesley Chapel. It was owned by a Chinese dude named Jin. Well, fuck Jin, but yeah, his name was Jin. Um, and Jin was cool. Jin was young. He was like 26. Motherfucker had a liquor store in the nigga neighborhood. You wonder how the fuck does a 26-year-old own a liquor store first and foremost. But anyway, so Jin was cool. I was doing my undergrad, so he gave me desirable hours and shit like that. And he hired a bunch of niggas in there to be security and shit. A bunch of big niggas, with guns and shit. We post up in the back, and it was some regular bums who lived in the motel behind us. Cool niggas, but some of them are ratchet, crazy, prostitutes, straight up bums. But it was a nigga named Arkansas. A nigga named Arkansas. He was the king bum over there. This nigga Arkansas, he looked like Pops off of Black Jesus. That's how he walked around. Like Arkansas talked so much shit. Like Arkansas talked so much shit, and yeah, so he would walk around with this sign. He'll call it his resume, and he'll bust in the door, and my manager's name was Glow. He'd be like, Glow, write my resume for me. So and he'll do it like during the day when Jen was there, like just a big disruption. But we were used to it because it was Arkansas. But me, I was just curious. I'm like, some one day, like he was just real abrasive one day, like and Jen was there, because Jen normally left at like 2. But Arkansas bust in there, just real abrasive. I'm like, damn, this nigga just Jen don't give a fuck about loitering. God damn, this nigga Arkansas looks scary to some niggas. But I'm just just observing shit. One night it was raining real hard, and Glow was like, man, fuck this, we about to shut down early. And Arkansas was in there as usual, just drinking his little shots and shit. And he was like, hey, Trey, take me home, take me home. I'm like, all right, whatever. He didn't think I was gonna take him home, so he was real excited or whatever. And he just hopped in my car, and I took him to the hotel. In that little 5 to 10 minute run, that nigga. was just sitting there. And then he was like, "Oh, I gotta tell you about Jen. Him and some white boys kidnapped me one day, and they took me to this church or this temple, whatever it is, and they all put me on my knees, and they all surrounded me, and they said, 'You are my father, you are my father, you are my father.
Oh
I
yeah,
must
Bobby
hold you
Hemmett
down. I
talked
must hold you
about
down.'"
this. Yeah, keep going.
This is before this. I didn't know shit about Bobby Hemmett. I looked at that nigga like, Arkansas, get the fuck out my car. Uh, but
Oh, I remember you
I
telling
thought
us
about it.
about this. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm about to say I told it a few times. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just Dr. Allen in here, but when he did it, I'm looking like, what the fuck is this nigga on? I mean, obviously he's on something, but it just made me think afterwards. Like he said, Jen kidnapped him with some white boys, and they did a Freemasonry ritual in which they acknowledge to the universe that they are the subordinate to the black man
Wow.
genetically. And then when I started listening to Bobby Hemmett, man, he got like 1,000 hours of lectures, and I couldn't even tell you which one it was in. But I just had my YouTube on, just psycho mode with him, and I heard him say that one day. I heard him say that one day, and it didn't click until about 3 years later. I put two and two together. I said, Arkansas told me the same shit Bobby Emmett told me. These motherfuckers. So with that, the Freemasonry, the Freemasonry is what they're using to do this, and they are inviting foreigners into the Freemasonry against us.
Hmm.
The Chinaman, the Arab, even the motherfucking Nigerian African. That's how you know we're the chosen people. All these bitches around the world have come over to get a hold of this slave, to get a piece of us through this system. They all want to come over here and enslave us. And the white devil is teaching them the secrets of it. And they were given that secret by the Moors. The Moors, the Moors are Abrahamic followers. Um, I have a radical belief system that the God of Abraham is the devil god Set of Egypt.
Hmm.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Uh, so the person y'all call God, Allah, Yeshua, what that is the devil god of Egypt. Um, and people who continue that tradition today are the Abrahamic faith people. Um, that's a sect cult. These people go around and they enslave us. They put us at the bottom and they live like fat rats off of our suffering. That was the point of the sect cult to begin with. We are the original people of that land. And after the fall of Atlantis, the people of the sect cult, they wanted to enslave the dumb motherfuckers, the people who lost their consciousness. They wanted to enslave them. They wanted to make them subordinate to them. The people who we call the priests of Egypt and the pharaohs, they said, "No, fuck that. We're gonna fight against that." And that's why Nubia and Egypt had wars. Nubia, people think, oh, black Nubia, we so black. I know this. Some people think, that's like, whatever. But nah, that was some fuck shit. And Bobby Hemmett really gets into that. The Afrocentric just get into the we all black stuff. What I love about Bobby Hemmett is he actually stated, we understand they were black. We're past that shit. That's elementary level shit. Let's get to the real shit. Let's get into the religion these motherfuckers were worshiping. Why were they fighting in the pre-dynastic? What was going on? What was this Set Typhon shit? Why was Horus the deity? All that stuff, that's what Bobby Hemmett gets into. But a conundrum of that thought process is where I get into. So, you know, some people, they might think different, but it is what it is. But that's the ins and out of it. A summary of how I think about it. So, you know.
That's very fascinating. I stumbled upon a book, and I actually bought it, that talks about the temple. It's a book on secret societies, and basically, ladies and gentlemen, if you start fumbling through the Memphite theology, the theology of the Egyptians, you'll see a lot of similarities between Christianity with the whole story of Aset, Asar, Heru. And there's a whole lot that goes into that. Well, yeah. but yeah, what he was saying is real familiar. Go ahead, love. I am. Can you hear me, love? I am.
Hey, yeah.
Hey,
Um, Thank you for allowing me to speak on here.
thank you for coming.
This is a great conversation. So yeah, the Moors did help with the transatlantic slave trade. They are gatekeepers. They are behind the Masonic order. They are the occult, and they are our boule. And with that being said, I actually was on Clubhouse and I got tired of hearing. And actually, I rebuked that.
Fire.
I don't even want to claim that.
Can I say?
Um,
Can I say something real love? That's fire. That's fire. What you just said.
Thanks.
The boule is the motherfucking Moors.
Yeah.
Hey, that's fire right there. I just had to.
Yeah, and that worship actually translates into Luciferianism. So it's actually not the scriptural the it's not Yah. And with that being, and I can prove it because I actually got so sick of the Moors having coming into, they would be hijacking the delineation and reparation conversation on Clubhouse that I actually screenshot when a guy put his Moorish, his actual his official Moorish documentation when he put it in the space one time because he was a Moor. Because I'm like, if y'all were in the beginning of time and y'all had all of these secrets, why don't you have the secret to the repair of Negroes, right? Y'all always in these conversations hijacking the conversation, but you don't have any information. You don't have, you should know the way to our liberty if you're saying that you consistently occupied your position of never having been enslaved. You consistently operate all from modern day back to, all the way to antiquity. Y'all were never enslaved, then y'all were doing some enslaving, okay? But I screenshot his document, and this is the proclamation. It says, whereas the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites, Hamittites, and Canaanites who were permitted by the old pharaohs of Kemet to traverse from East Africa and later formed themselves kingdoms extending from the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, the Atlantic islands, onto the present day continental Americas. Okay, so that's actually talking about dark race, dark races that were actually had the ability.
Does it say what date they came to the Americas?
It doesn't say it on here, but it actually, and it uses the term, whereas the indigenous Moorish people of the Americas are now united in order to again link themselves with the family of nations. And whereas the Moorish Americans being Aboriginal, so it's using indigenous and Aboriginal, which suggests that they were here in the beginning. And it also suggested that dark races had the ability to circumnavigate the planet before there was
Okay.
ever the existence of a pale skin. The significance of it being the descendants of the ancient Moab, Hamittites, and Canaanites is because those are three dark races that are not Negroes. Your so-called Negro, those are three dark races. So even when Wani was talking about the Semitic bloodline, the Moab, Hamittites, Canaanites, those would be your Hamitic bloodline. And so, because they are self identifying themselves this way per their proclamation, then it invites into the conversation the fact that they actually all fall under a broader classification of the Hamite, which are the original inhabitants of Africa. So, to say Semitic African is actually an oxymoron because Shem does not have its origin in Africa. They actually, and I sent Professor an ancient map where it shows that Shem was in parts of Eurasia, and actually, I think it was Asia Minor at the time, and came down into Africa. But this is why it's erroneous to have this term Africa applied to all dark races, because here you have different groups of dark race people, but they're not all the same people. And so the significance of these being the Moabites and the Canaanites is because the Moab and Canaan, they are actually the ancestral enemy of Shem, Semitic bloodline. So fast forward to today, when you have these gatekeepers that are have infiltrated the conversation. And mind you, the conversation of Negroes is a conversation of Semitic bloodline. Okay, whether you like it or not, and this is not a forced ideology. I literally just put the proclamation here. That means that there are Moors who are going around. This was signed by the mayor of Chicago, so they obviously have an ideology that comes along with this, where they identify under these identities. These are ancient identities that have always been around. Moab, Canaan, Hemitite. These are all Hamitic bloodline. Okay. So when somebody is saying, well, you Bible thumpers, no, this is literally this this is the information that has gotten lost. So even when the definition of black says people who have that fall into any of the racial categories, well, what happened to those racial categories? Why don't you hear about them anymore? Because then you would understand that the Canaanite is a dark race. The Ethiopian is a dark race. The Egyptian is a dark race. Negroes are a dark race. And whether or not you want, even if we acknowledge these are misnomers, is still rooted in the same fundamental truth that these were not a single homogenous African identity, and that these dark races are actually the original inhabitants of all of these land masses. And it's evidence of such here, because if we know that dark races are the original human, and here you have Moors claiming to be aboriginals to the territories of North, Central, and South America, then wouldn't it also, is it so far-fetched to believe that there was actually Semitic blood, the same way that there was Shem coexisting with Ham in Africa? Doesn't it make sense that Shem and Ham could have a coexistence here in the Americas? You see? So with
Now, I want to read something. Keep going, but I want to read something so we can understand this Semitic, Hamitic, and Canaanite situation, because you're right. We're just saying Semitic to uh, let people understand that it's different than some other Africans that are not that way. Go ahead.
absolutely. And it's bloodline that creates that distinction. So when African people come here and they act like they are not familiar with delineation, when that's literally the whole of their history, is that that continent was delineated, that's because they're a part of the plot. They actually need us to believe that we are some generic Africans. They need us to believe that we're some homogenous group, and we should all be, and it's never been like that since the history of humanity, before the presence of pale skin uh races in these places. And I'm going to go with I'm going to co-sign what FBA Trade A said, and I will even say that these pale races were actually authorized to do this by those dark races of antiquity, which in this case would be Moab, Hamittites, and Canaan. And with that being said, that's why it's very important that we continue to delineate, because even if even if you don't subscribe to what I'm saying explicitly, we have a knowing amongst ourselves when people are coming along, and because they are undermining interests are diametrically opposed, that they are not in fact us. And so that is something, that level is it's disheartening to me that that level of conversation cannot has not been able to go forward. But that's what I mean when I say that term African is being erroneously applied to the dark races, which are the aboriginals, according to Malcolm X, even, of the planet. You cannot have a conversation about the aboriginals without discussing these heavily melanated populations of people and how they are the original, and everything set forth after that is they are the progenitors. So yeah, every time, that's why I get annoyed when Moors come in the conversation, because it's like, hold on, you said you was never enslaved, now you're claiming a freedman identity. Naeem,
Oh boy.
that's an that's a contradiction right there. You never were
Yes.
enslaved, but you're a freedman. That doesn't make sense. But what
Mm-hmm.
you see because what were you emancipated from if you were never enslaved? But you're grifting, because these are the original gatekeepers. These are the facilitators of the slave trade. These are literally the ancestral enemy of our ancestors. So
Because only 2.5% of Black Americans said they wanted to be identified as Moors.
exactly.
And so it's not very popular. And so the best thing to do for a grifter is to jump on something that is popular, which happens to be our classification. Now, I want you and Trade Day to stay around because I want to go over this. These are,
Can
um,
I add? Can I add something real quick, Warning?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, y'all heard what Love I Am just said. What we've identified basically based on scholarship and deep thought is that something that Bobby Hemmett said. Bobby Hemmett said the enemy of the black man and woman came from Africa. Basically, it was a splinter group of Africans who turned on everybody. And I'm wondering, was this splinter group the Moors? That's just my wondering. Just my little.
I'm gonna go over the archaeological finds real quick. It's not gonna be long. So
Take your time, Warning. You got it.
first, early migration, 100,000 years ago, modern humans left East Africa, spread over to North Africa, the Levant, and Europe, right? North African settlement was 50,000 to 20,000 BCE. Early humans settled across the Sahara, and other groups settled in present day Morocco and Algeria. Next, 10,000 to 6,000 BCE, we have early North Americans developing tools and lifestyles, forming the base populations for the Berbers. So they would be Proto Berbers, which are often associated with Moors. So that's kind of where they're starting. Then you have the ancient Berbers forming 3000 BCE. The ancestors of the Berbers emerged in Maghreb, influenced by local Saharan, Mediterranean, and even European populations. And then you get into all the Phoenicians, Romans, and Islamic um, expansion. So, with that rundown, let's go back to ancient Berber formation. Where do you put this Semitic, Hamitic, Canaanite? Um, where do you put those bloodlines from
I
your
would
perspective?
um I would say from an archaeological perspective about the late Palestine 12,000 BC. I really don't go past this time period.
Love
Uh
it.
right. So in the
Hey,
late
hey,
Palestine.
you too. I done got out my pen and paper. Go ahead and start cooking.
Yeah. When it comes to the late Palestine, that's when you get a lot of archaeological evidence coming from climatic changes. This is when you see the first so-called race war recorded in archaeological history in the Nile Valley region, in what you call Jebel Sahaba, Jebel Sahaba. In this region, this is the region where this is, from my estimates, this is the region where you find the oldest version of our particular ancestors. People with morphologies overlapping ours, and where our genetic genesis arose. And Jebel Sahaba was in modern southern Egypt and northern Sudan. What we find there is you find arrowheads, and you find skeletons with puncture wounds. There was a race war or a tribal war. It wasn't a race war. It was a tribal war. Well, you can't call them races. Just they were all black, just different black races. But one of the races were a Negroid type, similar to modern West Central Southern type, uh, African type, and the other one was more of a Hamitic type. What the genetic data shows at this time period about the late Palestine, you see the emergence of the Natufians in the adjacent region of Egypt that we call Palestine or Israel today. The Natufians were sort of a crossbreed between the West and East African type. They had a West African phenotype, Negroid with a prognatism, and they had a genotype similar to modern East African. So they had E1B1B and E1B1. These people are the Neolithic farmers of Europe. But this is where it gets a little confusing. So you had some of these Hamitic lines go into out of Africa into Israel, and then you had some break away and go west along the Maghreb, along the North African coast. So they started around. Okay, E1B1A and E1B1B are brothers. They started to split apart about around that same time period and in that same region but in the vicinity of between Ethiopia and Sudan. So those brothers broke apart. The E1B1A that we carry, it stayed in the southern Egypt, northern Sudan region, and the E1B1B, the one that's our brother, the some would say the Hamitic line, that went north as well, but some went out of Africa and some went west along the Maghreb, along the Mediterranean coast. So they stuck along that coastline. We find their markers in ancient specimens there. So that is the genesis of what we call the Berbers. They stayed in place. They were a nomadic people for the most part. The late Pliocene is when you start to see this split happen. But of course, it goes into the Holocene when the Green Sahara started to form. So you start to see some of those populations from the Nile Valley go west into the Green Sahara, and some say that's the equivalent of Atlantis. There's a lot of theories about the Green Sahara period, but when that shit collapsed or when it went away, it turned back into desert. There was a lot of chaos, and from that emerged dynastic Egypt and Nubia. So, that's the sum of it, of the archaeological and genetic evidence with that time period.
Go ahead, love. I am love.
Hey, thanks. So you can try to see where what I'm saying fits what he's saying, because to some extent agree, and then some I don't. Only because I actually, even when you talk about Abraham in Scripture, and I am about to refer to Scripture, but the point that I'm making is that Abram went from Abram. I got this from Michael too. Abram went from Abram to Abraham, and that was because Abram entered into the land of Ham. And so the continent of Africa being the land of Ham. Ham is the progenitor of dark races, semicolon, not the Negro, but the Libyan, the Ethiopian, the Egyptian, and the Canaanite. The significance of that is that the Libyan is actually the Berber. And you can do I did a quick Google search as I'm sitting here listening. So that, and these are dark, now it says the progenitor of dark races, not the Negro, but the Libyan, Ethiopian. So that means that these are 5 dark races listed there. And this is coming from Zondervan's study, but the Libyan, and you can Google search this, are primarily a mixture of Arabs and Berbers. Okay. And but that Libyan, remember, is a dark race of people. And so that means that every African is not a Libyan. Okay. That's why that term African gets very confusing, because what happened is that these dark races of antiquity, they disappeared. They became one homogenized African identity, but it still doesn't account for the Negro within that definition. Now, mind you, of course, the Egyptian, that's not the original name. The Negro, that's not the original name. These are misnomers, but they still identify populations of people. And so that ancient Libyan, that would be your Berber. So then that gives you a frame of reference to the region that they occupied, and that would be North Africa. Which today you now see. So mind you, all of these bloodlines. So that means that, and even you had your Ethiopian, which is also a dark race that descends from Ham, but that could that could so that means that kind of disqualifies the conversation of trying to make this distinction between the East African, the West African, as you know it to be today, because these could all, in fact, be descendants of Ham that occupied the entirety of the continent. But then you have to still understand that you had some Semitic stock that had made its way into Africa. So, what could be happening is that where these two bloodlines coexisted, then you are saying that you are them. But really, what you're saying is that you occupied the same region. You see what I'm saying? So, like, that's why Black Americans, fast forward to our conversation of delineation, we can't even rely on a DNA test, because all it's going to tell you is that your ancestors potentially took occupancy in a particular region. But that doesn't mean that those people who occupy that region are your same people today. That's literally just saying your people were there. And it's actually saying your people were there during a certain time frame. But this is where I differ, is because I know that Shem, and I sent you the map, and I actually have one more that I need to find where it literally shows how Africa was broken up with those four dark races, the Hamitic bloodline races. It actually shows where the continent was once split, where all of those races had a region, but none of those were the Semitic bloodline. They were actually all Ham. So actually, Africa is the land of Ham. It literally belongs to the Hamitic bloodlines. And I feel like that's the reason why no one is really coming back to get us. You get what I'm saying? Because our people were there, but we were also here. That's and that's why when you can find ancient maps during that same time frame, they identify like 10 lost tribes. I'm not trying to superimpose, I'm not trying to like superimpose, but it's like the logic applied is literally,
What are the tribes?
huh?
Is this the Hebrew tribes?
Um,
Hebrew Israelite beliefs?
well, I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, but if you're saying like it's consistent with whatever they believe, then uh I'm just saying that,
Wait, you said 10 tribes though, right?
yeah, 10 lost tribes, because when you had that Semitic stock that was exiled into the land of Ham, they were two particular tribes. So that's what's commonly misconstrued as well, is that you only had two of those tribes accounted for, and that's because the kingdom of Judah broke off separate from the kingdom of Israel. But I'm actually saying that I don't believe the kingdom of Israel, and this is where I am getting into a belief that I have, but that's because art is someone who's presented maps where I've literally seen it literally say lost tribes on there. And I've also seen documentation where it was saying about these inhabitants in the Americas. And it goes back to my original submission where I had already stated that Moab, Canaan, and the Hamittites, they had already made their way into the Americas as well. So it's not far fetched to me that, in the same sense that Shem and Ham coexist in Africa, they also did in other places. And because these are ancestral enemies, it's also not far fetched for me to believe that there was the Moorish empires that actually, who they self-identify as the ancient Moab, Canaanites, and Hamathites. It's not far-fetched for me to believe that they actually conspired with other nations to facilitate this trade, to get these people out of the land.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's because, and we're all kind of saying the same thing different ways. Maybe what's the possibility that these Moors were trying to go against God's chosen people?
That's
What's the
exactly
possibility?
it. That's it. And what is the possibility that they actually have a moratorium on the information that we have access to today? Which is why you can't find the empires that Negroes had. You see what I'm, but they existed. You can see, and I know you, because you had access to that library. And I know that um I know you've come across where you had these kingdoms that were governed by what would be the Negro race. You see, but with the fundamental understanding that that Negro, that so-called Negro, was not the African race. These are two, and mind you, this African race today would literally be homogenized. uh what happened to those four dark races that I was mentioning earlier. I'm about to produce a map though to back up what I'm saying, because I want to show how Africa was actually broken up, and the Libyan race had a part. Ethiopia is not ancient. Ethiopia was inclusive of Central Africa, and everything that's in this proclamation. Even they, all of these dark races, they were moving around, but they just were not all the same people, and some of them were enemies, and some of them were taken into captivity by other ones.
Now, did you say the Hittites were part of this group?
um I put in the proclamation, it says the Hematites.
Hematitites, sorry, go ahead.
And that's probably just a derivative of that ham Hamitic identity, because yeah. But oh, and then also, so another thing is that Moab is where the kingdoms merged, because Moab was also some Semitic bloodline. I think FBA Trey had said that earlier when he was talking about their god of worship. So he was actually right about that, but that's because the kingdoms merged.
Now, see, this is a perfect example of what we're speaking about. Africans coming out of um, East Africa, if you will, and then branching off in all this stuff. Afro-Asiatic speakers or Semitic speakers. And here we have Canaanites, Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Tigrayan, Phoenician, Moabites, and others. Things I haven't heard of.
Me
Akkadian,
neither. Yeah.
Akkadian and Gertic. Now, the Berber languages are part of the Afro-Asiatic, but not considered Semitic. You see, I don't know why.
Exactly. Yes.
So, in the language family, there are Cushitic, Egyptian, and Chadic languages. So that's why it's very, you can see this idea, because I was going to talk about the notion of us branching off and people feeling irritated, me being one of the irritated people of all the branching off that we're doing. We started off with these groups saying that we were Black Americans. Then we said, no, we have to be foundational Black Americans because these other people are calling themselves Black Americans. So now we have to be specific about what type of Black American we are. We had to educate people on that. Then we said we're freedmen because we need this race neutral term to do business with the government. And then people said, well, hey, let's roll back and be Negroes again, maybe even colored. Then we have band, Solon, sorry. Then we have people wanting to call themselves copper colored, and we have Moors. So all that branching off got on my nerves, but it's actually normal. Okay, that's what people do. Just like with Catholic people, they branched off from Christians into everything. Orthodox this, all kinds of different types of Baptists and all that, all those different sects of you know Methodists, Calvinism, Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism. We could go on and on and on with things branching off. So let's not get mad at ourselves, because you're looking at, this is what people do. Germanic peoples turned into Danes, Swedes, Norwegians, Icelanders, uh, and even, partially other groups, English, Dutch, Flemish, Afrikaners, uh, Frisians, um, partial ancestry with them. So this is something that we have to go through, and it makes it difficult when we're trying to figure out who are these Moors. I mean, they were being called Moors, and they were just basically different types of African type people that were in the northern part of Africa, and white people decided that all of those types of people were Moors. Are we going to be able to find out exactly the backgrounds of these people if they were just calling everybody Moors that presented as of African descent with the being Muslim and having this outfit on? Do you think this is one group, or do you guys think this is possibly multiple groups of people that just were Arabized?
That's a good question, Wani. I don't know. I tend to lean towards it being one splinter group. Well, and I have theories on this. My theories go back to the Memphite theology. If you think of the original Holy Trinity of Aset, Asar, Haru, this as the story went, God, who we refer to as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, the creator, was Asar, the European renamed of Osiris. And Asar was God of the, or Osiris was God of the perfect black. Y'all can look up God of the perfect black and hit images. Well, Osiris had a brother who something was wrong with him, like he was like a disability, if you want to look at it that way. That he ignored his brother. His brother was very mischievous, but he loved his brother. And he let him get away with a lot of stuff. His brother's name was Set. Um, as the story goes, Osiris met his bride, Aset, spelled ironically like asset, but Aset. They got married, and before they could, make love, his evil brother Set killed him out of jealousy. And Set cut his body into 13 pieces, and he hid 13 pieces away from his wife, so she couldn't give him a proper burial. As the story goes, Aset turned into a hawk and flew around looking for pieces of his body, and found every piece of his body while she mourned him. And she put every piece of his body back together. She could find every piece but one. The piece she couldn't find was his penis, um, which the evil Set fed to a catfish. A catfish ate his penis. Well, anyway, she put them together and gave him a proper burial. 12 pieces of them. Well, could that be the 12 lost tribes? I don't know. But anyway, metaphor maybe. But anyway, when she put them together, as the story goes, an angel, his spirit came in the night and made love to her and gave her a son. Does that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? And the son's name was Heru, spelled like hero.
You said angel.
I think it was his spirit, but it was a different
How does
interpretations.
spirit have
Is
sex?
it a coincidence that it was 13 pieces and then 13 pieces of silver?
There's a lot of similarities. Well, yeah, how the angels have sex. Oh, Wani, I'm not. Well, well,
I
well.
need more information.
Oh Lord, could it have been an alien? I don't know. Well,
It could have
anyway,
been a nasty alien trying to get some.
it could be like you can look at this different ways, but my point of bringing this up was I wanted to show y'all how secret societies work. This the penis was the one piece they couldn't find, so the secret societies represent Set Typhon, which sounds very a lot like Satan if you think about it. Could it be similarities? I don't know. Well, if you look at these obelisks, these like the Washington Monument, that's a penis. That is a missing piece. And I'm going to put it to you this way: secret societies who represent Set Typhon are making fun of him like you never found your man parts. So when you see those obelisks, those Washington monuments, I want you to know what you're looking at. You're looking at somebody mocking God. I said a whole lot without saying anything at all. What's going on, love I am? Love I am. What's on your mind, love?
Sorry about that.
You
It,
good?
I'm not gonna. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Remember the last thing I said
Mm.
was, do you think that these are
Oh
different
yes,
groups? Yeah,
you
go
good,
ahead.
Wadi. That was good. That's what I was gonna say. So, at the very least, just to keep it relevant and tie it back into what we're dealing with in real time, I actually think that they've found a way to infiltrate our reparations movement. I actually think they exist still, and they have infiltrated our reparation movement. Um, yeah, and I think that they have the same function that they've had since antiquity, and that is to make sure that a particular group is dispossessed, disenfranchised, and ultimately in captivity, remains in a captivity.
Wow.
Yeah, because it makes no sense. You can't be a Moor and a freedman at the same time. It's two different ideologies, and we don't have an ideology, we have a lineage.
Right.
And they have an ideology because they're not Moors. They're just latching onto that identity. Um, the Moors here in America, there were Moors here. Um, According to a book written about my family, some of what they call Moors crashed off the coast of Delaware while they were trying to raid an English ship, and they were shipwrecked. So they blended in with different types of Native Americans and Swedish people because it was a Swedish settlement called New Sweden in Delaware. So these people were Moors, and in our country, they were classified at higher status than us. That's why that 1790 Sundry Act, they were not going to be treated as Negroes. They weren't going to be treated as Black people. They also have other histories of being overseers in the islands, and they have dealings here, and they are known to not be our status. Okay?
Huh.
So, this is why a bunch of people, some of my ancestors, were classifying themselves as Moors because they wanted to get some heat off their ass. And somebody was saying, did they get treated any better? No, they're on the census saying they're Moors, right under the people saying they're Negroes, and they're all being treated just the same, no different. But these Swedish people kept calling people Moors even after they blended in, because of course it's no women on the shipwreck. There was no women, so these male sailors blended in with some the Swedish people, the two types of Native Americans, people of Aboriginal descent or Austronesian descent or Proto-Austronesians, Negritos over here, whatever you want to call them. They weren't little, they weren't small frame people, so we won't call them Negritos. But we will say that there were some Siberian people there, according to the Swedish chroniclers, and there were these other Black Indians there, according to the Swedish chroniclers. And they blended with all of them. They complained about both the types of Indians because they said they were supposed to trap furs and they didn't bring us enough furs. Okay, that they had a general complaint that Black Indians were rascals, was what they called them, rascals that did not bring them enough furs. And they said that the red Indian fought with other red Indians, but didn't, the Black Indian did not have any fights with these people. They minded their own business. So ultimately, they all blend up together into a bunch of Black people up there. So they, if you do their DNA, you see a little bit of Swedish, and you see some of these other remnants of what went on that Swedish settlement. So let's go. What were we going to talk about the Moors anymore? I just wanted to follow up. Yeah, these guys, I can't tell if they're one solid group or if they're bound by their Muslim beliefs or their religious beliefs, and they are just falling under one category, but they may be different bloodlines. I'm really not sure what's going on with these guys. Anybody want to tackle it? Show enough, you had your hand up a while.
Come on, show enough.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so y'all touched on so much tonight, man. Like, oh my. Well, okay. So they said the Moors originally found them in the Caucasus Mountains and they civilized them. And of course, they had to sponsor them from there. There was a book, I can't remember the name of it, but the minute I find it, I will share it with you guys. They said Australia used to be 100% white. They got conquered and they deleted the men. You know what they did with the women over so many generations. So how many other places they did that to get their numbers up? And then when they had the $5 Indian program here in America, get their numbers up. The small hat people get their numbers up. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Well, ultimately, brother, it's all about numbers. I want to add something to you right quick. You said they and we got so many missing. We got a general puzzle that Trey Day helped us formulate. Love I Am's putting pieces. Wani's putting pieces. I'm putting pieces. But we got a bunch of missing chunks. And I bet you I know what the fuck those chunks are. Those chunks are at Harvard. Those chunks are at University of Chicago. Those chunks are at Georgetown. Those chunks are at Princeton in libraries that you need congressional permission to go look at. Well, anyway, my point is, bro, um, the Temple of Set, these people worshiping Set Typhon, Satan, whatever you want to call him. Um, Trey, actually, I got to give him props. A couple months ago, he put in my head. I was like, "Holy shit, that's what it is." In Egypt, y'all can look this up. There's a temple of Seti one, Seti one, and it never dawned on me that well, the temple of Seti one had a hieroglyphic. Metanetter is the actual word. A hieroglyphic of the men of the original man, the different forms of man. How many thousands of years old it was, we don't know, but it had the original man, which was jet black. It had the other original man, which was brown, and then it had a Semitic man, which was mixed, kind of looking like me, and it had the Tamahu. The Tamahu was the last man. It was a blonde, blue-eyed white man, and the Temple of Seti one specified that the Tamahu was created. So, and there you have it. The story, and Bobby Hemmett talks about this a bit. Bobby Hemmett looked through the metanetter and said that the Egyptians wrote, we know their name wasn't Egyptian, but just for the sake of academia, the Egyptians wrote the worst thing that they ever did was to create another man. And there it was, the Temple of Set I one. Trey Day could tell you a little bit more about it. But what I want to tell you is what happened to the Temple of Set I one. It fucking flooded in the middle of the desert. How's it flood in the middle of the desert? Did somebody flood it? Well,
Mhm.
anyway, what Trey helped, I've known this story for years, but what Trey helped me to see is that shit is a temple of Set. Temple, could it be Temple of Set number one? So if that's true,
Mhm.
that means the Moors came together, just almost like the story of Yaqub. They did an experiment, probably to create a subordinate race, and the shit backfired on them. Wani, could that be where our Germanic group comes from?
It's
I'm
looking
just
pretty,
saying.
Right.
looking
So,
pretty interesting.
Uh,
Go
so
ahead, Elvis. Elvis has been waiting a
my
long
bad.
time to say
yeah,
nothing.
I mean,
Elvis isn't going to say anything.
yeah, no. Long time listener, first time caller. Um,
Hmm.
so what do you guys what do you define as Moors? Because
Oh my
I'm
Lord,
starting to feel like
Jesus
Elvis, we're
freaking
no
trying to be
Christ!
serious here.
no.
Yes,
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
we just told
Hang
you.
on a second, like, because I'm starting to feel like you guys have a different definition than Europeans do.
It
But
no,
because
we
no,
don't.
let me
It's
finish first. Let me finish. Right. So in Europe, right, so Moors are
Hold on, Elvis. We don't care what Europeans define stuff as. Like, that's
his
not the
brain
point.
is Europeanized so bad. He's got to
Wow.
tell us what the white boy thinks. Isn't it? You know what?
Isn't that
This
crazy?
is why I always end up cursing, and I really don't want to.
hang on a second. You don't need to curse.
I'm gonna curse. I'm gonna
No,
curse.
no, no,
I'm
Elvis,
about to
no.
curse.
I want y'all to really conceptualize that. We in here building. We're scholars. All of us in here.
Exactly.
Eh,
And I'm trying to build
Okay,
on
let
that.
me. So, can I ask you a question? We already went over all of these Afro-Asiatic, Semitic, and non-Semitic speakers. We told you that they were Arabized, and why are you confused? And they lived in North Africa. That's what a Moor is. Do you have another definition you'd like to share with the class?
No, because from my point of view, it kind of feels like you guys think Moors are somehow connected with the US, and it's like,
I do not. Okay, I don't feel they're from the United States. They did come over here. We can debate about when, but yes, we had the 1790 Sundry Act. That was Moors, okay, in America. You got a problem with that? Are you denying that?
no, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, what problem do you have?
I don't have a problem at all. I just wanted to understand
Why don't
what
you
you
go look
define.
up? Why don't you stop bothering me? Stop bothering my black ass
I'm not
and go
though.
Google.
I'm just trying to jump in
You know
and
that
talk in
you
the
are, you
conversation
know
that
that
was
you're always a
interesting.
pain in my butt, right?
This is an interesting
Now,
conversation.
here's
I
what you
just
can
want to
do.
add.
Here's what you can do. Just Google what relationships do the Moors have with the Americas. They have some dealings over here. Okay. They got some dealings. They
All I
were
was doing
overseers.
was adding my two
They,
pence into.
you don't have any sense. And we don't want two of them. Check it out.
well,
They were overseers. They were over here trying to live and not be enslaved. They were doing a lot of things over here. Stop telling us stuff. Go ahead.
But the thing
Ray.
is, I actually have stuff to tell you.
Oh, no, you don't.
Okay, fine.
I removed them. I did. But I want to specify something because this is a real teachable moment. We're in here as adults, as scholars, as intellectuals, building off each other, gaining information, and we're reading J.A. Rogers. Fucking, I gave you a definition of the Moors from Chancellor Williams that said the Moors were who he says who the Moors. The answer is easy. The original Moors, like the original Egyptians, were black Africans. As amalgamation began more and more widespread, only the Berbers, Arabs, and coloreds in the Moroccan territories were called Moors, while the darkest black skinned Africans are called black Moors. I said that. I said eventually, according to Chancellor Williams, eventually black was dropped from blackamoor. We've been over this, but let me show you where his mind. Let me show you the dangers of this of members from that diaspora, like Elvis. Where did his mind go? His mind went to what does white people think about the Moors? Who in the
Right.
who gives a fuck?
And we gave multiple explanations about the Moors. And we
Right,
were kind of speaking who they might be, the different, identities that they created. We read from books. We just like we clearly said what these guys are. And we said we didn't know everything about whether they were different bloodlines or bonded under being Islamic or bonded under being what were we calling them? Mystery school participants. What's the other?
right.
What is it? Masonic? No,
Oh
whatever.
yeah, Trade said Masonic, but yeah, but I
Okay.
get you saying secret society, Temple of Set.
Right.
I don't
We
know what the
don't
word
know.
is.
We
Yeah,
don't know whether that's their main way to bond themselves together or if they're bonded by a particular bloodline, because there's so many Afro-Asian types running around in North Africa, uh, being classified as Moors because that's what the white man was calling them, presumably because of Mauritania. We don't know exactly if these are different types of Afro-Asiatic people or if it's one group. That's the part I don't know. I just know that they're up there and I know some of their origins, and I don't see any evidence that they were here along with, I don't see any movements of them being here in ancient times, like at the time that you would see an Aboriginal here tens of thousands of years ago, because they didn't exist. So they couldn't have been here before the Proto-Austronesians. So they couldn't have been here because they just developed, and between 3000 BCE, maybe you could say even as early as 6000 BC. They simply didn't exist tens of thousands of years ago here.
Yeah, yeah. But in conclusion, that's true, Wani. And what you just made me think about when you said 3000 BCE, could the Moors have been related to that whole Anunnakiism from Mesopotamia? I don't know. This is interesting. But what I want this room to really focus on is what Elvis helped us to see without even knowing he did it, was where all this vitriolic attitude towards foundational Black Americans comes from with respect to Africa and the diaspora. Our concern is, who are the Moors and what were they involved with? In a very honest, academic, almost childlike innocence, we as scholars, we approached it like, who are they? Trey, what do you think? Wani, what do you think? Love I Am, what do you think? Professor Nikki, what do you think? Like, just very honest. Show enough, what do you think? His minds, while we were trying to find out the truth, the um untampered with truth of who these people were, his mind was fixed on who the white people think they are.
Right. That's what the problem is. That's why we
That's
can
the
never get
problem.
along.
Yeah. He has
Yes,
white people on the mind.
he does. And he likes to go against what we're saying and refuses to Google.
Right. Um, I don't know who was next one. I got sidetracked by Elvis and his pursuit of whiteness.
Um, oh, let's go to Love I Am, and then we'll go to some newer speakers,
Come on,
some
love I
speakers that didn't speak.
am. Go ahead.
Briefly, I was just gonna say this proclamation actually, I don't know how he could say that he thought we were talking about this proclamation. They literally refer to who they, it says ancient Moab. So they're saying that they went under a different identity, even. But it all that was in Africa. So I don't know how he's even saying that. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are and I also want to say this, how are they, how is it that they can be exposed to the same exact information that we could be exposed to, but they literally just, it's so weird. It's like we're all sitting here together and processing the information. How do they just get these totally different interpretations of what happened, like what transpired here? Like, it's so weird.
It's a frame of mind. We up here thinking, like I said, innocently, as scholars, trying to find out what the honest to God, unadulterated truth. What is the truth about these people? And he in here, his mindset saying, these stupid niggas don't know that the white man said the Moors are XYZ. We don't give a fuck what the white man said. I want to know what the truth is. But that's dangerous, really. Cause he up in here just thinking, no, 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 no. The white man. That reminds me of shit I dealt with at the last college I taught at. Like, this motherfucker from West Africa gonna tell me what the white man book say about something. I don't care.
What we said didn't even go against what the white man would say, except for some trolls online trying to tell us that white people were the Moors. It literally doesn't go again. I'm using archaeological movements. This isn't this isn't controversial. We're not Afrocentric. We're just telling you the different Afro-Asiatic branching of these people and trying to figure out what they were up to.
I wonder what his attitude have been different if we all were Caucasian having the same discussion.
He wouldn't say anything because he knows he sounds dumb. He thinks
His
he could come up in here and sound crazy as hell and get away with it.
his shit would say listener.
We white folk, I'm not gonna
They talking.
pour
Be
that on
quiet.
him.
Shut up, nigga. White man is talking.
Mhm.
Leo, what's on your mind, bro?
Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hey, yes, sir.
Yes.
Uh, Hello, Professor Allen and Wani. Thank you. Thank you for having me up. Yeah, anytime you want to, I'm in New York City, and anytime I have a problem with an African or a Caribbean or getting something done, I need to get, and they're giving me problems, I'll just bring one of my European friends. They just, some reason, when they see a white person, they just, you know, they get on their knees practically, so anytime I have a problem. So it's not surprising. But I want to go back to that, when you were talking about Osar being cut up into pieces and spread out all over Africa uh, by his brother Set. There was one story where they said that Osset or Osar, she sung a song and collected his pieces, and she did actually find his phallus, and she put it together, and she sat on it, and she made love to him and brought him back to life.
Oh, I heard that one too.
Yeah, I think it's on one of the pyramids too. I don't know if it's SETI one. So, but yeah, all of those, like what I see too is like it seems like any region that's conquered, their higher deities are usually um uh um they're usually like made into like the lower deities. Like, so for instance, like that's why like the modern Satan is like an amalgamation of like Shiva, Baphomet, which is like like a origin of Hathor too. So like with the horns, like, so I think like once you get conquered, your deities, they become the lower deities and the ones who, of course,
Well, well,
conquer, tell the
well.
story. So
I was thinking of this story from another perspective, and I blew my own mind. Yeah, like, oh, you talking about the bull wanting?
yeah, and
Interesting.
and also they say Bobby Hemmett referred to Osiris as the Great Westerner. So we, they're saying like we are the children of Osar, the pieces, and so that's one, like, I
Yeah,
guess, like,
that's what I
story.
was
So
gonna. That's interesting. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Brother, where are you from? New York. Where? What's your lineage? Where are your
I'm
parents
in
from?
Brooklyn. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, but I've been in New York. I'm an artist, so I'm in New York. But
Yeah,
I'm
no,
from
no.
Fort.
Where's your parents from?
Yeah, my parents were from Fort Lauderdale. Like my dad is Georgia, uh, Waynesboro, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Charleston, different parts of the South. So I'm a Southern boy. So I'm FBA. So
Okay. All right.
100%,
All
yeah,
right. All
on
right.
both sides, yeah. Because I
Well,
know in
well,
Florida, I know, but I'm Generation X. So like the big wave of Caribbeans really didn't come until like the '80s, really the early '80s. So but prior to that, like everybody has like roots in the South from Florida. So
what I thought about, ladies and gentlemen, was and maybe Bobby said him had said this, but the story of the original Memphite theology of Set Asar Haru is really the story of the Black American, because
yeah,
Osiris or Osar was split into 13 pieces, and the story by an evil one. Osiris was God, Osar, God of the perfect black. Set, Typhon, Satan, or Lucifer. What does loose mean in Latin?
13 colonies.
It means, yeah, there you go. Loose means light. So you have the forces of white against the forces of darkness, which dark is good. Black is a combination of all colors. It's not
right.
bad. So basically what I thought about is that's really our story. The Black American's been shattered into 13 pieces,
Pieces, yeah.
and
Yeah,
we're coming together um to form the hero. That maybe that's what J. Edgar Hoover was saying, to prevent the rise of a black messiah was us coming together to fight, the light. Well, anyway, um, who was next? We're gonna go to who didn't get a chance to speak. Um, da, 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 da. Head and shoulder. Okay, I gotta see.
Dan and Head and Shoulders didn't speak yet.
Okay, go ahead, Head and Shoulders, then we'll go to Dan. Head and Shoulders, can you hear us?
no, Head and Shoulders might have went to sleep.
Sleep. My phone was glitching up.
Yeah,
To you guys, uh,
what's up, brother?
Professor, you bad for my sleep. I literally promised myself, I said, I'm going to go to sleep early. And then I said, let me turn off these notifications. Right before I did that, I saw your space going. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen for a few minutes. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me take out my notes. I'm like, it just kept going. And I wasn't going to come up until, and then also, um, you mentioned, I got to look at the note. Like I said, I've been taking notes this whole time. I'm just here soaking in the knowledge. So shout out to you. Um, the mention that you guys had about set the temple of Set I-1. There we go. Set I-1. And
Yes, sir.
when you were bringing up so much of the topics today, I would direct you all to look at Japanese mythology, or they actually still study when it helps to fill in some of these things, some of the blanks. They have the Egyptian mysteries that they study. So their mythology is a mix between like their own quote original, but when they before the Shinto and all of that belief, they actually go to school and they where they're studying that. And when you brought up that one where they had a creation and okay, that's the blonde hair, blue eyed creation, and they wish that they never did that. I'm like, all Japanese mythology. They even have it in so much of those animes and mangas as well. When you start looking at what they're studying, and then it directs you back to Egypt, I would imagine they got some information to just add in there, because one of them was usually when they depict it, it will be like some pink skin or like a pale skin being, and that being is like really goofy and very destructive. That's
Huh.
that you'll see. You'll see some pale skin, sometimes described as pink, sometimes it's a different color like a green or something, but they're really destructive. And at first it starts off like this. It was created to be subservient, and then at some point it's like demands got more and more, and then it started to think like, why do I need my creators when I can just do the thing myself, and they're having me do this, and then it eventually just turns. But the whole time has been destructive, even from the onset. It's like basically the creators are like, yeah, we gotta stop you from being destructive, and they're holding it back the whole time, and eventually it just goes haywire. So just wanted to say that. I was like, man, that sounds so familiar, but then I remember they study Egypt all the time.
I mean, it would make sense. Trade A brought up something where he was saying, or I think it was Trade A. He was talking about the what Bobby Hemming said about the um, Masonic temple or whatnot. That at the end of their process, they bring out a black man and they worship him and say, "He is your father. You must never let him rise again." Well, that fits into all of this. If Europeans were, if the a white man was created at Temple of Set I through genetic experiments, that would make perfect sense. That would make sense why certain Europeans, y'all know who I'm talking about, have a bug up their ass for black people, because well, if that's the truth and they know it, they know what how the story is going to end. When what did Bobby say? Bobby Hemming said, when you know the beginning, you know the end. Life goes in a circle, and if that story is true, then we already know how that's going to end. The black man and woman is going to take their rightful place. It's just a matter of time. If that story is true, I'm not saying it is, because I don't know if it is or not. I'd like to believe it is. Dan Quay, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Greetings to everybody. Good evening.
I'm sorry, hon. Go ahead. That was I was trying to send you a heart. Go ahead. Come off your mute.
Sending me a heart.
Yeah, I was sending a greetings heart
Oh,
saying
okay.
hello.
All right, all right. I believe. Did the Moors help this transatlantic slave trade and the Temple of Set? I haven't heard the Temple of Set in relation to the Moors, but I've heard it in relation to the Jews and
Uh oh.
Canaanites and the Hyksos, actually.
Hello.
So I don't know if you guys know about this, but then the Egyptians actually believed that Set was the god of foreigners. So anytime there was a foreign dynasty, they would assume that basically Set was in charge of Egypt
Wow.
The
around that
Hyksos,
time.
the Hyksos
Yeah, the
worship.
Hyksos. And so yeah, that's interesting. Um,
Dan Quay, that's very fascinating.
mhm.
That's very fascinating because, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who don't know, the Hyksos turned on the Egyptians and helped to destroy Egypt. Um, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen went on like he had an opportunity to look at rare collections. Most of the really good stuff in museums are in or in private collections that we'll never see. And Ben Yakinen spoke African languages. I think he spoke Ethiopian or whatever. Spoke Arabic, and he pretended. I love him for this. He pretended with his all his PhDs. He pretended to be a janitor and like a dumb, like like I'm not calling janitors dumb. I'm just saying he pretended to be kind of like a pauper and took a job cleaning up somebody's house who had a private museum, and he did a little spying, and he said he saw an original statue of the Hyksos, who history says were white people, and Ben Yakinen said he walked behind it, and he said it had braids. He's like the Hyksos was black. Black people turn on themselves. This is a story of betrayal.
Yeah. Uh, my
Yeah,
bad.
from what I know, the Hyksos were white though. I'm interested
Ben
in
Yakinen
They
said they
were
were black.
no, they
No,
were no. There are statues of the Hyksos with the biggest lips I ever seen. Uh,
mm,
biggest lips and widest nostrils I ever seen.
Yep.
This
I thought
is
they were Arab.
oh no, they were a mixed bunch. This is
Wait.
but
Professor, didn't you say they were Asian? And
they
then we
were
said, is that Arab? Are they
Oh,
calling Asians Arabs?
Doctor Chancellor Williams. It's confusing, but Chancellor Williams calls them
Asians.
Asian. Yeah,
Right. But
but he's.
see, okay.
so to put
But
to,
Asian means Arab, and Arab, Proto-Arabs are black. So here we go again with all
I'm
the
confused.
identities.
Yeah,
It's the identity.
what what Bobby Hemmett had brought up in his lecture, Human Artificial. That's the probably the best lecture you'll ever get on the origins of the white man. Human Artificial 1 and Human Artificial 2. They're both about 2 to 4 hours. But in both Human Artificial 1 and 2, he mentions that the Hyksos, for one, they used to be Africans. How do we know this? Set is an African deity. That's an African deity. You don't come into Africa worshiping an African deity unless you have prior dealings with Africa. That's what the
They
Hyksos.
are. Absolutely.
Right.
They
That's
just were living in Western Asia. This is it's an issue because when they say Western Asia, that's um, Arabia.
yeah.
And the people living in Arabia are of African descent back in that time. They didn't become have other phenotypes and other looks until some other things went down, which we'll go
I,
into later.
I put in the jumbotron. I created this map. I was debating these Africans in the group chat like last year. I grew up. I mean, I drew a very crude map of uh of what I think happened in 12,000 BC. And what you said is, Africans moved into the Arabian Peninsula. Those specific Africans were the Cushitic branch, the E1B1B carriers in the red arrow that I put in the jumbotron. You see them having the
Mhm.
yeah, coming from the same vicinity as the Niger Congo speakers in the green, being E1B1B versus E1B1A. And you see them leaving Africa. The Natufians, E1B1B is what they have. And of course, they go into the Maghreb, which later become the Berbers and the Moors. But as far as the
interesting.
yeah, that's a crude map, man. I'm gonna get like I said, I'm gonna get a blog, get more detail with it. But as far as the Hyksos were concerned, what Bobby Hemmett brought up is that these were the people who were exiled by Narmer. When Narmer
By
unified
who?
by Narmer, the person who unified the upper and lower kingdoms to make
Okay.
it in 3100 BC.
Okay.
So Narmer exiled the Set Typhons who were in Lower Egypt. He cut because they were surrounded. You had Set Typhons in Nubia, further to the south, and then you had them to the north along the Mediterranean Sea. He decided, look, we're gonna make everything from the first cataract all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. This is gonna be our land. It's gonna be Kemet. So the ones who were in the north, the Set worshippers in northern Egypt, he kicked them out, and they returned later as the Hyksos. That's why they were already worshiping Set.
Got you.
But that's what Bobby Hemmett pointed out, though. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Isn't that interesting? I think the world is in such a fucked up. The whole story of the Jedi is the dark side versus, and it's
Ooh, I'm glad you said that. Hey, there's a
wait,
blog. There's a blog that goes into detail about what you just said with the Jedi and the
yep.
priesthood. There's a blog that goes into so much detail about how that is based on that pre-dynastic Egyptian priesthood. The
Oh yeah.
ones, yep. I found that blog. It
I'm
went
not
so
telling you
deep,
everything I know, Trey Day.
man. It went
I'm
so
not
deep
telling you
into it.
everything.
They said that the Dark Vader, like his type, that was the Set typings. And the Jedi, that's the Jed. That's the backbone of Osiris. That's what you. But I can get into that. But yeah, that they literally took that from Egypt. Like that's these white folk are devious, dog. They twist our stories, but I'll end.
Yeah. So the story that like he just said, that's the story of good, and if everything's in reverse, black is good. Indie kindergartner knows if you take all your colors and write them, draw lines, it turns black in the middle. Black is a representation of all colors. White is the absence thereof. White is bad. So our mind has been warped. What I'm trying to say is what it looks like to me is for the last 6,000 years or so, the temple of Set Typhon, the worshippers of Set have taken over the world. But now it's time for a rise of the hero to put them back in their rightful place and take our rightful place. But before the hero can rise, what do the pieces of Osiris have to do? Come together. I look at Black Americans coming together and I think about the body of Osiris coming back together. And out of that body will rise a hero. Dan Quayle, what's on your mind?
Yeah. So there's one more thing. I don't want to offend anybody who's religious, maybe on the space or anything, but then there's
Mhm.
also been kind of correlation or identification between Set and the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, and the Set animal ended up becoming a donkey. And it became like a pejorative term that Egyptians would use actually for um, Jews who would be in Egypt. So they would refer to them as the people who worship a donkey god, but then the donkey is actually the Set animal. So that's that as well. But I'm not too sure
Well,
how
it's
any
Yahweh.
of that relates to the Moors. If we're talking
Mhm.
about the Tuareg kind of Moors, like I'm interested in
Well, we
knowing
don't
what you guys
know
think about
whether
that.
we're talking about the Tuareg or the Berbers or any of these Asiatic groups. I'm not 100% sure who these Moors in quotation marks are. Are they just a collective of these different offshoots? Or are they one group? Are they really tied together by their belief systems?
I
That's
think
a
it depends on the
question.
period of time. So that's why it's confusing, right? So depending on the period of time, it would just probably mean any person of dark complexion, and depending on
Mm-hmm.
the period of time, maybe it would mean somebody specific to a certain culture. And maybe in another period of time, it would be more of ideological kind of almost religious movement. So I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
blurs the lines and makes things confusing.
Mm-hmm. I
I,
agree.
yeah, a lot of things are hidden. I've got a book on secret societies and it talks about Satanism, also is associated with the Temple of Set. And it talks about abortion. Abortion was part of a ritual for Satanism. All this stuff is tied in together. Who knew that? It's all mixed up together. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look through the Jumbotron, you'll see our store publications. If you want a copy of my book, put $25 on the Cash App, put your full address and full zip, and your name, and I'll send you a copy in a couple days when I send out my next copy. A good number of people ordered uh, this early this week, and on your book will get sent out this week. Also, you'll see Onthespotts Cash App. Momentarily, I'm gonna put Nikki the God's Cash App. Show both of them love. We're going to I don't know if South. Have you spoke South?
No, I have not.
Okay, my bad, bro. I thought you spoke already. Go ahead, South, and then we'll go to Ani Saru. Go ahead, South.
Peace to the room. Was good, Professor Nikki. Wani on the spot. Love I am. And I just want to highlight, I appreciate you pointing out both your books and the scholarship that's been presented in this room. Because this is really a graduate level class. And one of my biggest recommendations to people is just take notes, right? Sit down, listen, take notes, and learn as much as you can when you come into professor's rooms and support the work that he's doing. That's one of the best things that you can do, right? Because they have literally broken down etymology. They've gone through history, roughly from 1400 BC, not 1400, 14,000 BC all the way up to 1980s, roughly. Just giving you different legal doctrine, etc., DNA, biology, many fields, right? This is a high level room, and you'll have people that try to come in and interrupt that. And we see how quickly the room got back to the scholarship. So just understand that. I know a lot of times people coming into these rooms, they feel intimidated, and you shouldn't feel intimidated, right? It's a very welcome and open space, but you are going to have to take some notes, be a student, and acknowledge a lot of the scholarship that's being presented. And it's going to be hurtful for a lot of people because it's going to contradict a lot of the things that you were quote unquote taught. And that's part of being a scholar is finding the evidence and backing up your statements with evidence and science. So rooms like this are very important because it's going to challenge you. And for you to get better as a student, as a human being, you're gonna have to do the work. And part of that is just taking notes, sitting down and listening and having an open mind to new ideas, to new concepts. Even when we do a lot of these timelines and you look at a lot of these Europeans, they wouldn't even be able to deal with half the stuff that they see in Egypt if they didn't have the Rosetta Stone, because they wouldn't be able to translate from one language to another language to another language to give those breakdowns. So trying to listen to them and explain to them what happened 3,000 years before that, they're not even going to get it. So you got to understand you're going to have to do the work. And I yield with those points. Once again, thank you for the room. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the listener and continue with my notes. I yield.
Appreciate you, South. I want to kind of bring together something before we close the space. Um, that's kind of hard to bring together. I'm peeping through a book of secret societies that I got a while back. It was hard to find. Talking about Satanism, since we're talking about Temple of Set. Well, I want to kind of show you what do you call it? How things are related. Like I told you that abortion, it says Louis in the book, it says, quote, where'd it go? I lost my place. It says Louis the 14th um had a elderly fortune teller abortionist named Lavocine who dabbled in poison, prostitution. All this stuff is part of Satanism, part of their black mass. At the end it says um, it talks about the Thule Society. Basically, it's kind of a hard idea to put together, but basically, in brief, all these things, all these societies involved with great perceived evil are related to the Temple of Satanism. It talks about the Nazis, the Novo Ordo Templi, that's related to Temple of Set. Communism, that's related to Temple of Set. Abortion, that's related to Temple of Set. Certain lifestyles that I'm not going to say on here, that's related to the Temple of Set. So should all this blight in human culture, could it all be attributed to the Temple of Set? Could this all be an attack from one vector, one enemy who is against creation? It's just something to think about. Onyx, what's on your mind? We'll get a couple more speakers, and I've been summoned to come to bed. Oh, Ani, sorry, did you get a chance to talk?
Oh no, I didn't know if you called me or Onyx.
Oh,
I don't.
I thought, yeah, I did call you before Onyx. I just didn't. I thought you talked already. Go ahead, Onyx. Sorry.
I'll let Onyx go first. I'll go second.
Go ahead, Onyx. You go, and then Onyx. Sorry, will have last words. Go ahead, Onyx. Onyx going once, going twice. His mic's not working. Onyx Saru, take us home. What's on your mind?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, excellent insight tonight. Um, the Temple of Set started with Michael Aquino, that he broke off from the Church of Satan, Antoine LaVey, and took his daughter to become the priestess of the Temple of Set. Forgot her name, but she resembles Taylor Swift. If you look up a picture of her today, I be forgetting all of these people's names, but it's in San Francisco. But Michael Aquino, the head of the Temple of Set, goes on to become the head of the first mind control programs of the military.
There you go. But there,
He,
checked it. Yeah, he was in the army. He was a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. But Wani, you remember we were talking about psychology, right?
Mhm.
Psychology, Freud, Jung, psychology is involved with Satanism. You see how it's all related to Satanism.
Yes, I remember, Marxism. And
It's
these guys were all Marxists, remember? And who was in charge of the Marxists? Karl Marx.
right, right. Go keep going, Ani. Sorry, you made me think about that.
yeah. So these things are cryptocracies, secret societies connected to other secret societies. They work like a web. So it's not just one thing. The Temple of Set was just an offshoot, and today is nothing but an LGBT type crux that they have out there. It's not really nothing too magical going on with it today. And I just spoke to someone who was a part of the OTO and was connected with some of those people, and he said, "Yeah, they're not really doing too much today." And guess what? Today, a Black American woman is the priestess of the Temple of Set.
Well,
Uh,
I gotta read some scholarship. I have a secret society book. I have the Secret Society Encyclopedia, believe it or not. And I
uh,
want y'all to hear that my Jumbotron is not working. Oh, there it is. It's up just for y'all. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna put some shit in here for y'all, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Temple of Set. Okay, hold on. Let's read this shit. Hold on, stand by. Come on. It's coming up. And I'm gonna read it aloud because this is Wani, this gonna blow your mind. This shit I'm about to read is wild. And it's such a perfect um thing to end on. This is from a page out the book on Temple of Set. But what I want y'all to read, you can see in let's see, one, two, three, third paragraph, about third paragraph starts on the fourth sentence. So it says uh the best known of the orders at this point, it's talking about Temple of Set now. At this point is the order of the trapezoid. Stop right there. Now, for some reason, everything shapes are important. There's sacred geometry, but I've heard over and over again a trapezoid is the most evil of all shapes. Well, it says the order of the trapezoid, which works with magical currents of German national what? Y'all see that word? What's that word? German National Socialism. There goes socialism involved with the Temple of Set. Socialism, communism involved with Satanism. Wani, I'm not done.
All
It's
offshoots of something.
yeah, you see it. It says while the Temple of Set rejects anti-Semitic, how do you say it? How do you say that word?
Semitic,
Semitism, anti-Semitism.
anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and indeed counts many Jews among its membership. Aquino claimed SS leader Heinrich Himmler as a high satanic initiative.
Hmm.
You see where we going with this?
Yeah, they were heavily involved in the occult. They don't deny that.
Talking about the Nazis, right?
The
Yes.
Nazis, a certain religion, socialism,
Everybody.
socialism, abortion. It's everything. It's everything right here in the temple of Satan. The temple of Set.
And every time you join these organizations, all of a sudden your career just skyrocketed out of nowhere. It's very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Really
Yeah.
interesting.
And I'm
My
just generate on
Go ahead, bro.
what Love said earlier. I just want to just say something real quick. Man, Love said something just that has just been on my mind for like probably about 10 years, man. When I first started getting into this. Them damn celebrities, them are the motherfucking Moors. They are. And they are against us. I've always wondered from the bottom because I know a lot of us think, man, if I ever get $100 million, I'll fix whoop the whoop woo in the community. Whoop, whoop. These celebrities who we worship, they supposedly come from where we come from, but they don't have to sit here and say that it's not come across their mind to fix this shit. No, they've been they're a part of some shit to say no. We can't. No. It's not that they can't. It's that they won't. It's that they won't. You know, it's niggas who say if I got $500,000, I would, do woo do woo in the community. You niggas got tens of millions, 100 million. Only thing you can do is a motherfucking restaurant. Oh, that's
I
the only
just
thing
had
you
this
motherfucker.
argument today, and I was so irritated by people talking about millionaires. And I said, the things that we're trying to get accomplished, oh, you need money to buy a lobbyist, you need this and that. Shut the hell up. We have tons of money. We could have bought a whole island and
Exactly.
built something. Oprah decided to buy a purse from Hermes and get cussed the fuck out and called a fat dog and still bought it. What the hell? She could have opened up a line of beauty supply stores that cater to Black American women. That would take pressure off. Oh no, she couldn't do that. She was too busy opening up a school and molesting everybody up in it. Yeah, hope it's recorded. That's how I feel.
That's the thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've enjoyed y'all today. I got an appointment with a beautiful woman and some ice cream. I called you out.
Hi, Miss Professor.
Okay. We'll continue this tomorrow. I enjoyed y'all. This might not be over because I'm
Let's
looking
do
for,
part two. We're gonna
let's
do
do part
another.
2 tomorrow. So
We're gonna do
guys,
another angle.
break out your scholarship. I can't let down what I just saw in a secret society encyclopedia today. I did not know that they were like related. So lockstep. But I enjoy y'all. I enjoyed y'all today. Hopefully y'all are gonna meet up on Tariq. Uh Wani, you got any last words?
Good night.
What about you, Nikki?
Have a good night.
All right. Well, I'm gonna see y'all tomorrow. Same time, same place. Peace out.